And we are finally live. Anybody that's followed this show for a while understands that we are going to have technical issues. So I appreciate your patience, and I'm so glad you're here because we are in for a treat tonight. And I don't know if how many of you have watched the promotional videos I did prior to this, but this is going to be a conversation that's been in the making for a very long time within my own life. And I believe that that's why I had the opportunity to have this amazing guest on the show, is just because of what's going on in my own life, what I've been seeking, and it's time to make it happen. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to this amazing guest. So if you've ever wondered or ever questioned if your personal or professional life could be different, and then you are experiencing frustration, disconnect, or having a longing for more, but feeling stuck, or would much prefer to experience a life of clarity, creativity, and abundance, listen up. Let me introduce to you a woman who I call a friend, but you will call your new secret weapon to success, because she is about to share with you how you can identify and break free from limiting beliefs, access the power of your mind, and create a life that keeps you in believing action with the results you've always dreamed of. I am so excited to have you here. Welcome to the show, Alicia.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. So, yeah, this is, I don't even know where to start with this show. This is,
Neither do I.
yes,
I actually have notes because, there's so much.
yeah, there is. And I have a funny suspicion that you'll be on more than just once. So, um, but yeah, so what I like to do is I like to have my guests talk about their hero's journey. Basically, how did you get to this moment of being this amazing performer, amazing coach, amazing mindset person, all of these things? What has been basically where you've come from, and what was the initiation process that has led you to where you're at? So just go ahead and share that, and we'll get started from there.
Okay, well, first of all, I just want to thank you for giving me the title of hero. When I saw that written today, I was thinking, whew.
Yeah.
Um, but absolutely, sometimes we forget just the stories and the hurdles that we've gone through to get to where we're at and how it can really inspire other people. So thank you for
Hmm. Yeah.
that. I think the biggest thing that started me on my journey, and I'm very well much still, in the beginning of it, right? I feel like because there's so much to learn, I'll always be in the beginning.
Hmm.
Um, but after the birth of my second child, I was in the hospital room and feeling completely great, wonderful, happy. And all of a sudden, I felt this excruciating pain in my head. I thought I was having a brain aneurysm. I thought I was going to die. I was literally thrown forward to the ground, like someone took a bat to my head from behind, in like convulsions,
Hmm.
and vomiting, and just this crazy experience. It's very, I can hardly believe it happened, and all not knowing what was going on. And what had happened is I had developed a spinal leak from an epidural because I was forced to have an emergency C-section, which I didn't really need. But needless to say, it happened. My son was footling breech and they were scared. And so the spinal fluid goes up your spine when it leaks, and it creates a fluid around your brain, and it just creates this pressure where it's literally squeezes your brain. And so you feel like your brain is hemorrhaging. Um, and so, with that, our side effects, that I was in, bed on and off. I was supposed to lay down for 5 weeks, but it went on for months. But it actually developed into things much worse, like 2 weeks at a time, not being able to walk, and
Hmm.
massive spinal pain, which fast forward developed into what the doctors call as spinal arthritis. I'm a pretty tiny person too, and I've had four babies. And so it's a lot of pressure on the spine, just that. And then, the epidural just kind of threw things out of whack. All things, though, happen for a reason. And
Hmm.
as much as that was the most excruciating pain, and going through that spinal pain, I'd rather deliver 10 babies, in a day than go through that kind of pain. um, but it led me to this incredible thing because just after years of it progressively getting worse, and I was such an active person, always like playing football and soccer, any sport really with my kids. I was in gymnastics, and the fact that I was now limited, and also in fear of doing certain things when the pain wasn't there, because once you know what that pain feels like, right, then you start to live in caution.
Mhm.
And then I started to study Louise Hay because I'd already been introduced to her through a family member. And I was like, wow, this is right on. Her book, Heal
Mhm.
Your Body, I started using on myself and my children. And then I got in touch with Joe Dispenza, and things just blew up from there. You're laughing, right? Because the book actually, I have my stash of books because I'm a little bit like, I'm a huge book nerd, okay? Not a little
Cool.
bit.
Cool.
You Are the Placebo. I want to share these books as I'm talking about my story.
Absolutely.
Um, that one is very powerful, but really, any of Joe Dispenza's information talks about the power of thought association to the function of your body. Basically,
Mhm.
change your thoughts, change your biology.
Right.
And I was just like, no way. We have medication, we have hospitals, we've got, people committing suicide, like all of these things. And I thought, seriously, is it really this simple?
Mhm.
And so I'm just the type of person that if there's a possibility, I'm going to test it. I'm going to test it on like every avenue of my life, because I don't read a book in a weekend. It takes me months. I study sometimes 2 paragraphs at a time, and it's
Mhm.
always, how does this directly affect my life? And then how can it change my present circumstances? Because I'm obviously reading this for a reason. I'm not happy or unsatisfied with something.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it just kind of snowballed. And well, right? Once you open that door to awareness, you're just like, gimme, 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 gimme. And you can't get enough. So I started studying neuroscience, and NLP, and just the whole nervous system of the body and how it works and the science of it. And there were so many things that prohibited me from doing that before, because I was raised in this religious belief that we're supposed to suffer. We're supposed to suffer right now, and there's no power within us that can create any kind of healing, mechanism in our body. And
Mhm.
so I didn't research that earlier, but intuitively you just know, right? I can look
Mhm.
back. You can't connect the dots of success forward, but backwards, I can look back and say, man, I intuitively knew because I did so many things differently than the people that I know. Um, Also, with that, I was able to look back and, with Joe Dispenza and all these different people, uh, and their just amazing information. I was able to remember, like by the time I was 11, I had severe asthma. I was on different steroids. I had stomach ulcers. I had my appendix rupture. I was under so much stress. I had,
Mhm.
problems with my teeth. I just all these reoccurring health problems, allergies. I would go and get allergy needles 3 times a week. Um, and then I started actually pulling out my hair, which is, I mean, most people, when I tell them, they're in shock.
Mhm.
I put this in my book because, there's still parts of me that say, what made me do this? To the point where I had huge bald spots on my head. I mean,
Mhm.
and I was a little girl, and we had to cut my hair off to here. And then I can look back and think, how I started to change my thinking around that time when it happened. Because
Mhm.
we lied to everyone. I used to perm my hair, back in the 80s. We all had these like big perms. And so my mom said, just tell people we burnt your hair. Um, but I started doing visualizing. I mean, I've been doing that since I was a kid.
Mhm.
Just so connected, as Joe Dispenza says, change your thoughts and you can change your reality. Change
Mm-hmm.
your present circumstances, change your biology, change your life at a cellular level, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual.
Right.
And I used to think, oh, one day I'm going to have long, beautiful blonde hair. And, before I knew it, there it was. But fast forward, I got really engaged into that study. And you know how one thing leads to another? People started coming into my life. I met Bob Proctor, who became a good mentor, Peggy McCall. I started going to some seminars, and this was huge for me because I had been a stay-at-home mom for 12 years. I was a working mom before we had children, in corporate marketing and stuff like that. Went to school for journalism, and but I hadn't been away from my family at
Mm-hmm.
all, or my children. And one day I just was like, you know what? I got to do this. I hopped on a plane, went to LA, went for a seminar. And next thing I knew, I was just surrounded by all the people that I needed in my life at that right time to propel further awareness, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what this is all about. It's about
Right.
awareness, right? If you have awareness, then you have the ability to change.
Right.
Um, and so, I had met with a friend, and she said, I'd like you to meet with a stranger in Guelph, Ontario here. And she said, just meet him for coffee. I'm not going to say anything. I just want you to meet this person. Um, and I said yes, which was really bizarre because, as you know, I was raised one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So even to just go meet with a male who
Mm-hmm.
was a stranger, um, and how that might look, right? Like perception wise. And so I get there, and we're in this coffee shop, and he asked me one question, 4 words, just 4 words. And I felt shameful. I felt guilty. I felt almost like angry and violated. And who the hell does he think he is?
Mm-hmm.
And just sad. And then I broke out crying. And it was the most bizarre moment of my life. I'm sitting here crying in this coffee shop with a stranger. And you know what it was that he asked me? Those 4 words.
Life changing.
What do you want?
Mm,
And
powerful question.
it is. I mean, what was funny, if you would have asked me that, and all of this happened in 2015. If you would have asked me that before, I dug into all of this information,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would have just laughed. Well, I want to be a good mom, and I want to make it into the paradise after God brings Armageddon, and that. But I had something in me, and he knew it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think this is such a massive question for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what background, if you're male or female, how young or old you are, you can go through your entire life and not actually say what you want.
Right.
Because saying what you would want would require a decision
Mm-hmm.
and a commitment and accountability and responsibility. And it was just funny because our body has these physical reaction based on our emotional stability.
Right.
Right? Dis-ease of the mind creates dis-ease or disease of the body,
Right.
which, had been happening in my whole life. And so, this question, it was crazy because I was like, what does this mean? What do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole day I felt like I was floating because I started to answer. And he left me in that coffee shop and he said, I want you to write all the things that you want. and don't leave for like half an hour. He said, just sit here and write.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally started writing, I get to. And it was so powerful. And I kept saying to myself, why didn't I admit these things to myself before? Why didn't I make time to even answer this really, really simple question, right? Um, and for most people growing up, they tell their parents, you know, when I get older, I dream to do this and I dream to do that, and I'm going to use my gifts. But it was never like that for me because it wasn't prohibited. And it wasn't prohibited because saying what I want, I was taught, would be taking from the glory of God
Mm-hmm.
and his only purpose for us, which
Right.
is the way I was taught.
Right.
So obviously, you know, that leads me into so much more um, in how I was raised. So most people know I've done quite a few posts recently and sharing, you know, a few things here and there about being one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so many people before I started doing those posts, actually, almost an explanation, because people would say to me, how is it that you're doing so much and why? And this is abnormal, you know, like you have 4 books written on the go waiting to be published. You are saying you're a recording artist, you're a mindset trainer for the NFL and sports and entertainment industry. Like how,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it's because I feel like I've had a lot of time to make up for, right? Because
Mm.
I
Right.
haven't had that freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people say you're kind of like a 12-year-old experiencing the world for the first time, it's the case. I mean, you wouldn't believe like the simplest things. I'm like, yay! I'm like so cheesy because I get so excited about things that people have been doing their whole life, and I'm just finding out about now.
Right.
Um, yeah.
So let's talk about this because I know a little bit about your story. Okay. And what let's put some application on what you've been sharing, okay, as far as what Joe Dispenza talks about and things like that. When you look back now, when you were having all these physical ailments, what do you think was the cause of that? When looking back on it now and knowing that your thoughts create what your mind and your body does and all that stuff, what was that part of, and why how, what did that look like, where you had all the allergies and you were getting these injections and stuff, and then boom, they went away? So what happened there?
So we are products of our environment.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved out of home to go to school, all of those ailments completely went away because I was not in that pressuring environment. But
Mm-hmm.
those ailments came because I was under huge stress as a child, not only in my family upbringing. I mean, everyone has a bit of crazy in their family,
Right.
but the association of fear, so much obligation, and in that feeling also the disruptive notion of knowing that this isn't right, this
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel right, being taught something as if it's the truth. So for instance, it was so the way we're raised in our belief systems, they're embedded, right? I mean, it's just embedded in our foundation of our entire belief systems.
Right.
And first seminar I went to at Bob Proctor's, he yelled, I was in the front, he yelled from the stage, quit watching the news. And I was just like, oh my goodness, that was creepy. How does he know I'm addicted to watching the news?
Right.
And, you know, my mother would always have the news on. And if anyone knows Jehovah's Witnesses, they know that they literally live waiting on a daily basis for Armageddon to come. And so I would watch the news and look for signs of destruction, terrorism, you know, famine, hunger, all of the signs of the times of the end.
Right.
And I would hope that it was coming soon, because then in the new system, we called it the new system or the paradise earth, I would get to be who I really am. I
Mm.
would get to live my truth. I would get to be a singer, and I would get to speak on stages and inspire people. And it didn't seem like it was possible. I did not believe I had a choice. Number one, because again, like I said, the dialogue of the words gifts or dreams were not prohibited. They're just not prohibited. And then also being a woman,
Mm-hmm.
being a woman in that religious patriarchal system, it really just keeps you this big. You know, I was engaged, married, 19, and it's what you do. You create this belief system that this is all you get to do. Going back to what do I want? Well, there's not even a consideration of that.
Mm-hmm.
And because of those beliefs, it creates this entire dynamic that controls your life, right? And so, you know, all of these health problems, including my spinal leak, and it wasn't even that long ago. I don't even really like to talk about it. In seeing the results of my MRI from my doctor, and him saying to me, you know, the doctors have suggested surgery. This is a severe case. And he says, but you are doing incredible.
Mm-hmm.
What's happened?
Right.
And so I told him, I said, meditation, visualization. I've created a new, you know, neurological belief system. And
Mm-hmm.
he just thought it was incredible. He said, because I don't know how you're not walking without morphine. On
Mm-hmm.
top of that, I've had other health problems like ovarian cysts and different things like that. And it's a joke now. I say to my doctor, you know, give me 3 months and I'll get rid of it. And I have. And it's like you can continually heal your body. But again, you can heal your body, but as long as you have those like shame and guilt and obligation and fear, you will continue to get dis-ease of your mind and disease in your body.
Right.
So basically, in the study of neuroscience for me, I came across, as I was saying, you draw things to you. I
Mm-hmm.
came across fear-based mind control
Mm-hmm.
and how it's prevalent in people with certain health problems. And it was very, very close to my different issues that I had going on. So I dug deeper and right into the whole systemization of fear-based mind control within religion.
Mm-hmm.
And I dug so deep. And I just remember I was editing my mindset book and something just popped up and I went to it and read it and watched something and it connected dots so profusely. I just remember sitting there for 2 hours and I just sat there and I just thought, this can't be happening. My whole life that I've ever known, it can't really be a lie. Like, if not this, then what? You know,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be a religion that has got it right, that is the one people that are going to be saved. I
Right.
mean, we're talking, I was hardcore. I was pregnant with 3 children, you know, breastfed 10 and a half years, and I'm bringing my 3 kids and pregnant, breastfeeding one, door to door, voluntary service, 50 to 70 hours a month, volunteer. And I realized you know, I could say very quickly, but it wasn't. It was a matter of years.
Mm-hmm.
Just how precise the cult that I was a part of with Jehovah's Witnesses had such a severe control,
Right.
down to even, you know, for their Sunday, what most people will call it church, their meetings, they study these watchtowers and they will read the paragraphs and they will ask a question before. So your mind is thinking about the question
Right.
because you're always trying to, you know, participate. So you have that question in mind. And then when you answer, they only want you to read that one sentence to answer. So don't put anything in your own words, just, you know, stick to that. Well, all the other information is being embedded and programmed into your mind, and your conscious mind is not even aware.
Right. Right.
And yet it is they're teaching we love unconditionally, yet the only thing I realize I've learned is how to love with conditions. I mean, can you imagine married 19 and a half years and saying like, yeah, I don't even love my husband unconditionally
Hmm.
because I don't know how.
Right.
It's not like it's an intentional, um, you know, just it really just it was mind blowing. It really turns your entire world upside down.
Yeah. I want to share with everyone that's listening here that how I found you was you had posted something on Instagram, I believe, in promoting Leah Remini's Scientology edition on Jehovah's Witness, and which I was intrigued by. And the other part of it is I want to be very clear with everybody that's listening that this isn't about bashing religion. This is not about bashing anybody's mindset. This is about understanding, really coming to terms with why do you believe what you believe? And is it through conditioning? Is it through wanting to comply with what the whole family's done? Is it, and I really want people to understand this is because it doesn't matter what sect or whatever, but it's really understanding of us taking control of what we believe and really understanding and thinking about what we think about. And it's when I was promoting this video or this show, it's a great question to ask: is what is truth? And what does that mean to you, right? And how did you come up with that definition? And how much research have you done with that? And that's where, like with you, I wanted you to share a little bit about, here you have this paradigm, and listening. And I want to comment on the news thing too, is how much they watch the news, is because people need to understand that the media has, what do they call that? Consumer engineers. They're called consumer engineers. Their jobs are to put out media, commercials, and things like that to get into your psyche so that you consume more. Okay. And understanding when we have cortisol dumping in our bodies, it causes pain. We want that pain to go away. And we see a medication or something going across the screen going, that's the answer to it. So people, we need to understand that we are being conditioned all the time. So talk about how, when you were going through, you start going to this Bob Proctor and things like that, and you were going through this, what I like to call the butterfly medicine process, where you're doing this metamorphic process of knowing that you got a choice. This life you've lived for 4 generations, and now you're being introduced to new concepts, and you realize at some point of like, I've got to let this go in order to explore this more. So talk about that as far as the process, the thoughts you were having, the questions you asked yourself, and things like that, because I think that's really important. People, if letting go of beliefs that do not serve them and stepping more into their truth, I think is absolute freedom. So talk about that a little bit.
I think the question that you said, is this really the truth?
Mm-hmm.
So asking yourself, I mean, I had come downstairs one night and the Leah Remini show was on and I watched it,
Mm-hmm.
and all these bells and whistles went off and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
it does take a lot of courage. So asking yourself, is this the truth? Is this really the truth? How do you know?
Mm-hmm.
You prove it. And that was one of the biggest things, was I actually made a conscious decision to leave this group, before I had even seen any what Jehovah's Witnesses would call apostate videos, which is people trying to pull you away. They think, right? They think they're like this evil people. All those came up after, but I was in the seminar, and like I said, what do you want? And then when you realize that you actually have a choice, the law of polarity, law of compensation, all these laws of the universe, they don't change for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be sacrifices.
Right.
And I think that's when I really realized I was in an unreasonable, not only an unreasonable religion, but just a cult, because the difference between religion and cult is what happens when you try to leave and
Mm-hmm.
if you're punished for it. And I knew that there would be a cost. But is the cost greater staying, which I felt was my life, my
Right.
health, my children. And I think, Jeff, that is the biggest thing that would make people leave or stay or investigate further awareness, is whether or not you even know what you want. I always had a burning desire to be an author and to be a performer. I just knew it was just like, it's just like in me, right?
Mhm.
And people would say on the stages, if you had to say you're never going to do that, you're never going to pursue that, how would it feel? And if you're okay with it, you
Wow.
know, then you leave it. But if you're not, and I wasn't, it was a burning desire. And that is what triggered me to propel myself into further research. Is you got to have something you love for yourself. But if
Right.
you don't love yourself, if you don't have a good self-image, you know, it took me 2 years, Think and Grow Rich, the chapter on autosuggestion.
Mhm.
I kept reading it over and over because it's about implanting an idea in your mind of possibility, right? And then I got into studying psychocybernetics, which is on
Great books.
self-image.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and when you're in these fear-based, mind-controlling religious groups, you're you're just like this, you
Mhm.
know, like you don't even think that anything is further. And I got to talk about the fear. I mean, when you leave, not only I knew a lot of people, thousands of people, and right now, not only are none of those people allowed to speak to me, they're not allowed to text me, they're not allowed to message me. I'm like this evil villain because I'm so evil. Because I'm so happy. Um, that even my family has completely cut me off because it's the rules.
Right.
It's not biblical rules. And my whole life I went thinking that all these religious guidelines were biblical rules. And now that awareness led me to understanding that they're nothing more than policies and procedures within a society, an organization that is business run.
Right.
Now, am I anti religion? Am I anti God? Absolutely not. I
Right.
think that if you are tapped into infinite power and respect God and the divine and all of the blessings and creation He's provided, this working universe and the mechanism of it, however you want to say,
Right.
your life is so much more profitable,
Right.
right? I mean,
You know,
because it's people have used religion to villainize the ability to tap into your own power, because then it's like, as we were taught, leaning upon our own understanding,
right.
as opposed to learning the power within yourself
Right. Right.
to be able to make those choices.
Yeah. And there's you know, we're coming up here. Well, I guess we started a little bit late, so we got some more time. But there's something that you shared with me, and I hope it's okay to share this because I think it is so important for people to understand. Our minds, our unconscious minds, top prime directive, top job is to protect us, right? So what it does is it creates this thing called a critical factor, and when we start pushing into it, we experience cognitive dissonance. Now, those are big words, but it makes us feel completely uncomfortable to the point of having a very visceral response. So I would like for you to talk about, and this is why you're somebody that I would call a real hero, is because you pressed in to the uncomfortableness. You pressed into the pain. You pressed into the things that most people would have went, oh, this is too uncomfortable. This is too painful. I need to stop. And then slowly let things take over that will take them away from their truth anyway. So you're the one of the ones that went, wait a minute, this is not the way, and you pressed into it. You challenged the system. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you look at spiral dynamics, I mean, it's even more amazing. But when we talked about a couple different movies, okay, and I'm not going to mention the movies unless you want to, but the part that I want to really emphasize here is how the investment you put into an identity, right? And you knew that you have to let this go in order for you to be where you're at. And it's just like the butterfly. The caterpillar has to go away for the butterfly to evolve. And so, talk about how you just kept pressing into that, knowing that this is part of where you're supposed to be.
Um, well, you mentioned the word challenge. I challenge everyone to challenge everything.
Mhm.
And if that gives you a feeling of fear, even the Bible said, Jesus said to keep on seeking the truth.
Mhm.
Now, if you challenge things, everything that you learn, that's the only way that you're going to grow. And
Right.
here's the thing, the truth is the truth. If people are afraid of you searching or digging into something, it's like if I had a business and I said, all my products are natural, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to, go online and check. And I tell everybody I know, no, don't go online. Don't go online. Don't listen to anything that that person's saying. You got to kind of wonder, my intentions can't be good. So if that's what's happening in your life,
Mhm.
challenge it, right? And I kept going because I had a bigger purpose. I felt like, I stopped reading the Jehovah's Witness literature, and I just started reading the Bible. I
Mhm.
love it. I mean, it's just like this beautiful poetic book. And I thought, I got such a connection to just living kindly from that standpoint and lovingly.
Mhm.
Um, and I prayed a lot. It was all I knew how to do at the time. And then I kept researching. And I felt like I had this massive responsibility. I have 4 children. It's not just about my dream, it's about theirs. And it's about creating this new family dynamic. And, people ask me this, how do you believe so much? And my resilience, I mean, I do harness the good from being a Jehovah's Witness. Like, you know in those 50 hours of volunteer service, I could spend 45 and not have one conversation, or have many conversations where people are like, nope, nope, not interested. And it helps when you got, cute kids with you at the door. Some people take the literature if you're lucky, right?
Right.
And but I realized I wasn't really manifesting those proper conversations to draw people in, because my authentic self was going, I don't really believe this.
Hmm.
And I know for a fact that there's thousands of people experiencing the same thing,
Mhm.
who have been raised in that religious upbringing and thinking, why haven't I been able to convert more people and help more people get baptized into this religion? And you keep telling yourself your heart's in it, but when it's not. I mean, I had anxiety, right? And just, breathing. I've discussed with you the challenges I went through with, even I knew in my heart I wanted to be a singer. um, and then I would go to sing and I would run out of breath, and I do this like breathing, singing like I'm not even singing. And it wasn't until I started doing like NPT therapy and studying the science of how your body works, as opposed to listening to other people tell you what's your purpose, what you're supposed to do, listening to that inner voice. And I struggle with it. I think everyone struggles with it, probably. I shouldn't say struggle, but it's a challenge
Right.
when you listen, when you don't. But I listened, and I'm a believer, and so, going door to door and having people slam doors in my face and say no, it built a resilience in me for now when I stepped into this new life, this real life, like this scary real world that I didn't know was there. When I tell people, hey, I'm going to start working, doing mindset training for the NFL, they're like, you can't do that. People have been trying to get in for 25 years. I'm like, really? Watch me. And it's not even like coming from an arrogant place. It's just that I believe,
Mhm.
because I believed so easily and strongly when I was a part of that cult, right? And now it's just, it's in me, right? I developed that ability to see beyond, to see into the future.
Right.
But for people who are struggling with that, it's just, you have to, as you had mentioned something, I can't remember what it was, but I wanted to touch on how just speaking your truth and
Mm-hmm.
living your truth helps you detach from the past energy.
Right.
As you know, I've been listening to Energy Anatomy, right?
I know.
Huge.
Yeah.
But when you detach from that energy, because I know in my heart I need to forgive, and it's so easy to step out and be like, "Man, are you serious? I wasted all of this life,
Right.
and I could have been doing all these things, and I just want to hold the hurt and the anger and everything, but all for a reason." And
Mhm.
we only do what we know. When we know better, we do better, as Maya Angelou says.
Right.
And so, just stepping into, I really can't explain why I feel so fearless. I just, I believe. And this is why it's easy for me to put people in believing action, is because I make it seem easy, because it is. I think it's a decision. You make a decision to take the good and the scary. I won't say the bad,
Right.
just the great and the scary, right? And when you do that, if I can just inspire anyone, out of their comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
anything that you're questioning, it opens doors, and it may close the doors behind you that you knew, and that's scary. But the
Right.
doors in front are so much more exciting, because it comes from a place of creativity,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, it's living as opposed to existing
Right.
in monotony, you know?
Right. Yeah, and it's amazing listening to you of just, I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with women, and this, I'm saying women for a reason, is because they wanted to work with me. They went and talked to their husband about it, and their husband just absolutely shut it down, and just going, "This is brainwashing. This is," and it's just like, wow, and like you and I had the conversation, one of my favorite passages in the Bible is Matthew 18, where the disciples are saying, which one of us is the best? And Jesus grabs a child and sets that child on him. And he says, if you do not have childlike faith, you cannot enter the kingdom. If you do not become childlike, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And if anyone causes his child to lose faith in me, it would be better for him to be chained, a boulder chained around his neck, than drown in the depths of the sea. And I see that there are so many different theologies, dogmas, different. I mean, it's not just for religion, it's for anybody that squanders the spirit of that childlike part of us that wants to create, that wants to expand, that wants to explore. And so many people out there need to make sense of why they're where they're at, that they attach it, someone that, I mean, if someone like either you or I, back in the Reformation, we'd have been burned at the stake. We'd have been burned at the stake. And that's what I want this show to be about, is having conversation that ignites new possibilities for people, because you are the one that's creating your life, whether you're doing it intentionally or you're allowing someone else to do it for you. And that's what I love about your story, is that it's just like I see this butterfly emerging out of where you've come from, and it's amazing.
Thank you. I think, um, when, as you're talking about being childlike, um, I've done several of these personality tests, and they all come back that I'm 15 at spirit and 85 at soul. There is something to be said. I have 4 children. I'm on the floor rolling around and smothering them in love and playing all the time. And part of what I do in the mindset training now, I've trained myself to tap into my imagination. That's where the possibility is, because our present circumstances, hang on, sorry, my battery's getting low. Our present circumstances can seem so impossible to step out, and so scary. But when you, tap into that imagination, that visualization side of yourself, I say to my clients, go back to when you were 5 or 10, or a safe time when you could think to yourself, I want to be this when I grow up, and I want to be that when I grow up. And it's okay for children to say that, right? And to say 10 things. But all of a sudden we get to become this adult and someone says, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're like, I don't want to say, I'm going to get embarrassed. Or you're thinking, crap, how can I put this down to one thing?
Right.
Right? And we are born creators. We are meant to do a multitude of things.
Right.
Obviously, if you're trying to reach a goal, it's better to focus on one thing. But I always say, for me, look, I had a lot of time that was, not necessarily taken from me, but not used in the way I would have chosen to. So I don't want to pick a lane. I want the whole highway going the same direction.
Well,
um, you know?
and that's what I was going to say that, and I kind of got sidetracked. But that's one thing that's amazing about how your spirit about all this is that you're able to take the good and the lessons from it that has made you to step into who you are today. Where so many people are just like, that's good or that's bad, and that's the result of the conditioning from the media. It's you're either in or you're out, you're Republican or you're Democrat, and being able to look at what was part of the forging process that brought this incredible spirit out of you that has basically catapulted you into where you're at right now. And I think that's amazing. I think a lot of people, it's just like, well, they're in a relationship and it doesn't work out the way they had hoped. It's just like he was a bad person. No, there's behaviors about him that are not appropriate, obviously, but there's still a good person in there and things like that, and being able to get more granular about the experience. And I think that that's a lot more liberating than throwing it out with the bathwater. So I think that's awesome. You're able to do that.
Yeah. I do my best. I've had my days where I just, I feel like I've just gone gung ho and made the worst choices. And then I say, no, these were necessary choices to
Mm-hmm.
get me where I'm at.
Right.
And it's that concept of failing your way to success. And you cannot, there's days I've cried myself into the floor. And then you realize possibly the expectations you have based on people's ability and awareness could be unrealistic. I mean, I was a hardcore Jehovah's Witness, and if anyone brought this stuff to me back then, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you're all demonized."
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that because I was so in.
Right.
And the idea of most people's parents not talking to them. Now my children don't have grandparents to see on either side. It's mind-boggling.
Right.
Yet we've found so much love within ourselves. It's brought us so much closer, and new relationships, like attracted these positive relationships. And I think I mentioned to you, my maid of honor, she was one of my closest friends. And after I got married, she left the religion and I stopped associating with her. And I never had a friend after that. I knew people and I knew acquaintances, and I would show up at all the church meetings and whatnot. But I couldn't be myself because I wasn't living my truth. And when I thought I had the freedom to express that, I'd be reprimanded from it, even by people who were really close. Like, oh, you're getting out of hand, or you're thinking a little too worldly or out of the box, and that type of thing. And so the biggest thing I can say to people too is, if you're looking to make change, look at the people who are surrounding you.
Mm-hmm.
Start saying positive things that you want to do, and see how their reaction is. Is there a reaction, out of just their own place of being uncomfortable?
Right.
Um, do you feel a certain way around them? And I just continue to surround myself with people who were inspiring, people who believe in me, people who can help me, people to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
Because, in that religion, women, the conversation stays at the kids being sick and the new system coming. um, and I just felt like I couldn't engage. And when you're not living in your space of truth, again, back to the truth,
Right.
it's so superficial.
Right.
It's just very minimal.
So we're coming to the end here, and this is the question that I've been waiting to ask you the whole show. Okay.
Uh-oh.
What is your definition of truth?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, how long do I have? Um, well, truth is based on your understanding at the present time.
Mm,
But I will also say, no one knows your truth like you.
right.
No one knows what's going on in here. That's a little voice that everyone has. We can choose to turn the volume way up or we can turn the volume off.
Hmm.
And every decision that you make, my definition of truth is when someone says something and I like or dislike it, I'm going to ask myself why
Hmm.
and then prove it to myself. How does that make me feel? Is it true? Is it really true? I mean, now I'm really in a place of investigation.
Right.
And so it has to truth has to resonate with you. And you
Hmm.
know what? The truth that I'm experiencing in this moment, we could have an interview a month from now, and I'm going to say, man, you wouldn't believe what I've learned. And
Right.
I better,
Right.
because that is the state of growth, right? But
Right.
again, you standing in your truth really boils down to, again, is it true for you? Are they your beliefs? Are they someone else's?
Right.
And just challenge it.
Right. And
Mhm.
that's a great response. I think we have 10 to the 10th power times 11 neurological connections. So just think about that. So that's 1 0 with 110 zeros behind it. Okay. And
Yeah.
for one person to say, I know the truth is impossible. It's impossible. And so I really, the thing that really excited me about when you and I have had conversations and bringing you on is just for people to understand the belief is a choice. Belief is a choice.
Mhm.
And beliefs are very dynamic because there was a time in your life when you believed you were 16. There was a time in your life when you believed you were 21. You believed you were single. You believed you were married. All these beliefs change as we evolve. And I think it's our responsibility as divine, unique divine expressions. I think it's our responsibility to find out what our own truth is outside of what we've been conditioned and programmed to believe, because it's liberating. And it's like, if we, how's that saying go, if we surrender our responsibility, we surrender our liberty. And that's what, that's where I think you're a true hero, is that you challenge some of your deepest programming that you were programmed to believe. And it's that, to me, that's a hero. And that's why you're on the show, is because I just think it's amazing. So
Thank
any
you.
closing thoughts that you want to share with anybody? And by the way, how can they find out more about you and your amazing voice? She's got an angelic voice. You have to watch her on Instagram. She's got an amazing, amazing voice. And please support her and share her stuff, because she is. Someday we're going to say, I remember when you're on the Grammys, go, I remember. So just, yes, how can people get a hold of you? Whoops.
And I'm looking at my phone battery.
Okay.
Yeah, so I share most of my artistic side, my singing and things like that on Instagram. It's AJ_Wirth. Facebook, I share some things. And if you're looking for mindset training, personal develop, things like that, join me on LinkedIn under AJ Wirth. Mhm.
Alicia, AJ, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. Got to have you back on. Got to have you back on.
Definitely.
Great, great conversation.
Well,
Everybody, I've got a big announcement for you. Next week, next Tuesday, I'm going to have David Brown on. He's done some amazing things. He's actually authored a book with Ben Gay III. And I've got a great announcement. I have reduced my book to actually my cost. So go and get a copy of this. You can get a Kindle version for 99 cents, and you can get the physical copy for $3.97. I lowered that throughout the month of December so that I can bless you this holiday season. Again, everybody, we appreciate it. And if you have any comments about this show, please comment them below, and she will come back and answer them. So will I. Everybody, I appreciate your support. I appreciate everybody being here. Alicia, I appreciate you being a hero and pushing through and giving us the opportunity to be a part of your journey of you transforming this planet.
thank you
Everybody,
for having me.
yes, thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.